I never planned to be a hero. I was just tired. 3 days without proper sleep, 2 cold meals, and 1 borrowed blanket. That was my life on Velkorath Station, after the reactor failure tore through the lower rings like a hand-ripping paper. I was Sergeant Dara Okonkwo, field medic, attached to the 3rd Joint Species Relief Corps, and I was supposed to be packing my kit and heading home. The station smelled like burned metal and recycled air. It always did. But the disaster had made it worse, sharper, heavier, as if the walls themselves were grieving. 3 days of pulling survivors from collapsed corridors and sealing the wounds of beings I barely understood had left me feeling like an empty jar. My commander, a tall, blue-scaled Ashkori named Vethral, kept reminding me that the rescue operation was officially over. "We have done what could be done," he said, in that calm, ancient voice of his. He was 300 years old. He had seen disasters on 12 planets. He did not say it to be cruel. He said it because, to him, it was simply true. I believed him, almost. I was walking through Sector 9 Keth, a corridor the engineers had condemned, sealed off with yellow warning tape and 3 separate structural failure notices. Not because I was supposed to, but because it was the shortest path back to the docking bay and my boots hurt. That was the only reason. Tired feet. That was all it took to change everything. I heard it before I understood what it was. A sound. It didn't come through my ears so much as through my chest, a low vibration that settled somewhere, just behind my ribs. It was the kind of sound that doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives and waits for you to pay attention. I stopped walking. The corridor groaned around me, ceiling panels hanging at wrong angles, emergency lights flickering amber. I held my breath. There it was again. I followed it deeper into the condemned sector, past the warning tape, past the point where any sensible person would have turned around. Vethral's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Sergeant, your location signal is moving in the wrong direction." "I hear something," I said. "It is a pressure vent, or cooling beams contracting. The sector is structurally dead. We confirmed this 2 hours ago. It doesn't sound like a pressure vent." A pause. "Sergeant Okonkwo, do not go further." I went further. He found the source before I saw it. My scanner beeped once, registering a small biological signature tucked against a sealed blast door at the end of a collapsed maintenance corridor. I had to crawl the last 12 meters on my hands and knees. When I came out the other side, I saw the child. He was small. Even for his species, he looked small. Kethshri children have 4 arms and skin the color of a winter sky, blue-gray and faintly luminous, as though light lived just beneath the surface. His eyes were enormous and reflective, the kind of eyes that seemed to hold too much of the world in them at once. He was sitting on the floor with his back against the blast door, all 4 arms wrapped tightly around his own middle, his whole body trembling in rhythmic pulses. No tears. Kethshri don't cry that way. But the trembling told the story well enough. He was doing something with sound, I realized. A low, subsonic vibration that his species produces when they grieve. It was beautiful, and it was terrible, and it went straight through my sternum like a slow wave. He was saying something, over and over, in broken galactic common, the shared language we all used when nothing else overlapped. "Please wake up, Mom. Please wake up." I sat down next to him. I didn't speak. I just sat. After a moment, he turned and looked at me. Really looked. The way children do when they're deciding whether a stranger is safe. I suppose I passed whatever test he was running, because he leaned against me without a word. Humans run warm. I know this. Most species do not share our body temperature. To him, I was probably as close to a heat source as he could find. He pressed his trembling body against my side and kept saying it, softer now, like a prayer he no longer expected to be answered. His name, I learned later, was Say. His mother, the station told me, was dead. Her name was Yenketh. She was an engineer who had pushed her son into an alcove and sealed the blast door before a secondary collapse swallowed the corridor. Every scanner on Velkorath Station agreed. Her biosins had flatlined 19 hours ago. Vethral told me this gently when he arrived, kneeling down to Sage's level, speaking in the careful tones of someone delivering a truth they wish were not true. "Little one," he said, "your mother is gone. She gave herself so that you could." Sage made a sound. Not words, just sound. I felt it in my teeth. I put my arm around him and looked at my scanner again. I had been scanning the area since I sat down. out of habit more than hope. And then I saw it. A flicker in the thermal noise reading. A pattern repeating at 0.3 cycles per second, faint as a candle behind a wall. My entire body went still. I knew that pattern. I had seen it once, in my second year of training, in a case study drawn from Earth's early emergency medicine archives. There was a condition, extremely rare, documented only in extreme traumatic shock, where a body didn't die so much as disappear. Shunt blood from every limb to the brainstem. Drop core temperature by degrees. Slow the pulse until no standard scanner could find it. The body hides. It waits. It looks exactly like death. Every reading says death. The only thing that says otherwise is that tiny, stubborn flicker in the thermal noise. Repeating, repeating, repeating. We called it suspended metabolic cascade. Kethsri are not human, but their species evolved on a cold world. Cold world biology tends to develop similar solutions to similar problems, across species lines, across galaxies. Convergent evolution is one of the universe's favorite tricks. No Kethsri doctor had ever thought to look for this pattern because the scanners said dead, and the scanners were always right, except when they weren't. I stood up. She's not dead, I said. She's in cascade suspension. I've seen this before. On Earth. In humans. Vethral looked at me for a long moment. That is not possible. I know, I said. I'm going in anyway. What happened next was mostly a series of arguments I lost on paper and ignored in practice. The station administrator, an 8-limbed Irathi named Kos, denied my request for a rescue crew because the structural risk was too high. 8 lives could not be gambled on a 0 probability recovery. I told him not to send anyone else. Just me. He asked why a single human life was worth less than 8 others. I told him it wasn't. I told him I was choosing. He approved it, in the end, with the particular expression of someone who has run out of regulations to cite. Vethral walked beside me to the sector entrance. He told me quietly that I was letting the child's grief cloud my thinking, that this was what humans did. We felt too much, acted too fast, and suffered for it. He wasn't trying to insult me. He genuinely believed it. In his experience, emotion was a variable that complicated good decisions. I thought about what he said for a moment. Then I told him the truth. You call it emotion. I call it the reason I'm still standing here, while every logical being on this station has already walked away. He didn't answer. I walked in. The corridor made sounds like a living thing in pain. Panels shifted above me. 2 sections of my planned route collapsed while I was still mapping them, and I had to reroute on my feet, reading stress fractures in the walls by the light on my scanner, calculating load distributions the way my instructor had taught me, the way I had practiced on simulations and hoped never to use for real. Every calculation had a feeling underneath it. Every logical step forward was also a step toward a boy sitting on a cold floor saying, "Please wake up." A ceiling section gave way and landed across my left arm. The pain was immediate and total, and I noted it, set it aside, and began the process of freeing myself. I had to dislocate my own shoulder to pull free. I did it slowly and deliberately, breathing through each stage, because panic wastes oxygen, and oxygen was something I needed. When my arm came loose, I kept moving. Pain is just data, I told myself. The data says I'm still alive. I reached the blast door 22 minutes after I entered the sector. I burned through the lock with my cutting rig. The door hissed and swung open. Yenketh was on the floor inside. She looked like sleep. Her skin had gone a pale, almost white shade of blue-gray, and her core temperature had dropped to 22 degrees. Her pulse was 4 beats per minute. 4, not 0. 4 was everything. I worked faster than I had ever worked in my life. The rewarming had to be gradual. Warm her too fast, and the cascade reversal would cause more harm than good. I used thermal anchors placed at specific points on her body, a method developed for human hypothermia cases and modified in my head, in real time, for what I knew of Kethsri physiology. The cardiac stimulant I used was half dose because her heart, though still technically beating, had been still for so long that a full dose could stop it entirely. Every decision was a calculation with a margin of error I could not fully know. I made each one and moved to the next. Her heart restarted on the 3rd stimulant pulse. It was a small thing, a low, rhythmic thud that appeared on my scanner display, steady and stubborn. I exhaled once. Then I got her stable enough to move. Getting out was harder than getting in. The corridor had shifted while I was inside. I carried Yenketh across my back. She weighed roughly 70 kilograms, and I had one functioning arm, and navigated the collapsing infrastructure with a kind of focused calm that I still don't fully understand. The communicator crackled somewhere near the halfway point. It was Say's voice. Someone had given him the device. "Is she awake?" he asked. I was on my knees at the time, inching forward under a hanging ceiling beam with a full-grown alien across my back. I could feel the structure groaning above me. I said, "Not yet, little guy, but she will be. I promised." I hadn't promised before that moment, but saying it made it true. That's how promises work sometimes. I came out of Sector 9 Keth 31 minutes later. Behind me, the corridor finished what the reactor had started. The whole section folded in on itself with a long, grinding roar. I stood in the open passage with Yenketh's arm across my shoulder, both of us covered in debris dust, and looked at the people waiting there. Vethral, Kos, a dozen engineers and medics and crew members, who had apparently gathered to witness what everyone expected would not happen. Nobody moved for a moment. The silence had texture. Then Say ran. He didn't run to me. He ran to his mother, all four arms reaching before he even arrived, making that low, trembling sound of grief that I now understood was also the sound of relief, of recognition, of a child finding the person they thought they had lost. He wrapped himself around her and pressed his face to her shoulder. Yenketh's hand moved. Slowly, with great effort, she lifted it and touched his face. I sat down on the floor. My shoulder sent a sharp message to my brain, and I let it. The medical team swept in around Yenketh, and I watched them work, and did not try to help. Vethral sat beside me after a while. We didn't speak for several minutes. The station hummed around us, the sound of systems doing what they were built to do. "I have lived 300 years, he said finally. "I have served alongside 40 species. I have never seen a being willingly enter an unsurvivable space for a stranger's child." I shrugged my working shoulder. "I'm not special. Any human would have done the same." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I know. That is what impresses me. And also, honestly, frightens me. Both at once." I smiled at the floor. The official report that Kos filed contained one line I was told about afterward. It read, "Sergeant Okonkwo performed a non-standard biological assessment, resulting in the recovery of one Keth-3 citizen previously classified as deceased. Method employed: human intuition cross-referenced with convergent xenobiology. Reason for ignoring all structural safety protocols. Insufficient documentation." I was told that was the most polite way the Urathi language could express the idea that they had no explanation for what happened, and it worked anyway. Say picked out my commendation gift himself, a small piece of blue stone, carved with a Keth-3 glyph. The translator rendered it in Galactic Common as, "the one who is unreasonably sure." I keep it on my dog tags. It sits right next to my name and blood type, which feels about right. People sometimes ask me what I was thinking when I went into that corridor. They want a big answer. Something about duty, or courage, or humanity's place in the galaxy. The truth is, I was thinking about a small boy pressed against a door, saying the same 5 words over and over, in a language that barely fit his mouth. That was all I was thinking about. That was enough. The universe already has plenty of beings who know when to stop. What it needed, in that moment, on that station, in that broken corridor, was something that didn't. I was just glad it got to be me.